Okay. Good evening, everyone. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we're ready to begin. My name is Patricia Jameson, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Queen Anne's County. Welcome, and thank you for participating in this forum for candidates running for the 2 vacancies on the Centreville Town Council. This forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Queen Anne's County in collaboration with Queen Anne County TV over there. The League of Women Voters was founded on February 14th, 1920, to prepare women to vote, because women didn't have the right to vote before that. And they didn't know how to vote. So the suffragettes decided that they would form the League, and they would teach or prepare women to vote. It's a nonpartisan organization whose membership is open to anyone at least 16 years of age. The founders believed that a nonpartisan league could provide education to the public to ensure the success of democracy. And we certainly are right in the throes of that right now, aren't we? What does being nonpartisan mean? Because people sometimes question, what does nonpartisan mean? It means that the league does not support a specific candidate, and instead allows candidates to present information in forums and through questions that we pose in the voter's guide. Our league, which has been active since 2004, and Mary was one of the original founders. I think you're the only one here that was there in 2004. We support the belief that democracy works best when voters make informed decisions, and forums and the voter's guide are one way to do that. We have a really nice website, so if you want to learn more about our league, go to our website, lwvqac.org, that's League of Women Voters Queen Anne County.org, where you will find a video produced in collaboration, again, with Queen Anne's County's TV, entitled The Vote for Women, that overviews the history behind the founding of the National League, as well as provides information about our local league. Again, thanks to Mary. I know she doesn't like me to do this. But Mary has chaired these forums for many years, and she really provides the leadership for us with regard to these forums. She made certain that the candidates receive the invitations and information, that the press, and we have someone from the press here today, was informed of the event. She also developed the program, and which has been distributed. And we have Gina Crook here, who's going to be the timer, assisted by Mary. So again, a special thanks to Queen Anne County TV for producing the event, and to all of you who are here today participating in this event. It's really important. You can't hear me? It's really important for people to come to forums such as this and to read and make sure that they understand who they're voting for and why they're voting for them. Some people are participating by Facebook or by live streaming, and a YouTube video of tonight's event will be available on the Queen Anne County TV website after the forum. In fact, all of the forums have been videotaped, and they are available on YouTube on the Queen Anne County TV site. I want to thank especially the candidates here, okay, for your willingness to serve our community and for being part of the forum this evening. So at this time, I'm going to turn the forum over to Mrs. Liz Hammond, who is our league's vice president, and she's going to introduce the candidates and moderate today's forum. Liz?
Good evening. My name is Liz Hammond. I'll be moderating tonight's forum, and this forum is being videotaped and also live streamed by QAC TV to the QAC TV Facebook page and qac.org/live. Our forum tonight is for the Centreville Town Council. There are 5 members on the council, and each member is elected to a 3-year term. 2 of the seats are up for election this October, and there are 4 candidates running for office. Jeff Keel, who is the incumbent, Jim Beacham, Tim McCluskey, and Dan Worth. The 2 candidates who receive the largest number of votes will win the election and will serve on the town council. The format for tonight's forum will be as outlined in your program. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and give an opening statement. After the opening statements, I will ask a prepared question that the League of Women Voters has sent to the candidates beforehand. After the candidates have answered the prepared question, the floor will then be open to questions from the audience. We have 2 timers in the front row with signs to give a 15-second warning and then a final stop after the allotted time is up. We ask that you please hold all of your applause until the end of the forum so that we have as much time as possible for your questions and answers. Now, please make sure all your cell phones and other devices are silenced, as I just did mine. So the forum will now begin with the candidates introducing themselves, starting with Tim McCluskey, who drew the first number for the order in which they will answer questions. Gentlemen, you each have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Pat, you did such a great job in thanking everybody for coming. I want to thank the League of Women Voters. I want to thank everybody who's attending as well as watching. And I want to thank my wife for allowing me to go through this campaign once again. My name is Tim McCluskey. I've lived in Centreville for 16 years. My wife and I moved here from Boulder, Colorado. We wanted to raise our kids in a town that was similar to where we had both grown up. I grew up in a small town in northern New Jersey. She grew up in a small town in southern New Jersey. So we found Centreville and just fell in love with it. I got 3 generations living here as well. My mother-in-law, Sandy, who's actually in the audience, she lives in Centreville Heights. And again, my wife and I and our kids. I've got, the oldest is a freshman in college, and I've got 2 in high school right now as well. I graduated from the University of Delaware with a bachelor's degree in business. I've got a 25-year business career as well, still working full-time also. I'm an experienced leader. I know how to build consensus, and I know how to get results. I was honored to serve on the council for 12 years. Prior to that, I attended 3 years of council meetings back when it used to be at the firehouse. I also served for 2 years on the planning commission before I was on the council. I haven't been on the council for a year, but I have been spending that past year actively following town issues, listening and talking to residents, and speaking out at council meetings. I was just at this past council meeting and provided some public comments on a development proposal. My 16 years of consecutive engagement really gives me a lot of institutional knowledge. I have the experience to ask the hard questions of developers or engineers or anybody who wants something from the town. I hope that you'll support me on October 3rd. Thank you.
Jim?
Go? Okay. First of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this on, also QAC TV. I've resided in Centreville for 22, let me back up. My name is Jeff Keel, first of all. I've resided in Centreville for 22 years. Grew up on Kent Island, married, have 3 stepchildren, 6 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren. I'm a member, I'm a volunteer at Goodwill Fire Company, been there for almost 20 years. Own my own grass cutting business for the last 35 years. I'm trying to think, a little nervous. Anyway, I want to do what's the best for the town of Centreville, make good decisions. Been on the town council for 2 years now, learned a lot, still have a lot to learn about the town of Centreville, the way it operates. That's it. That's all I got.
Jim?
Thank you. Like my predecessors here, Tim and Jeff, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, Mary Campbell for organizing this, and Liz Hammond for being our moderator, and Pat for her leadership as president of the League. That's great. So my name is Jim Beacham. I came to Queen Anne's County in the year 2000, and I've lived in Centreville since 2005. My family covers Centreville up and down. Our daughter owns her home in the Heights. Kathy's on the back row. Kathy and I live in Providence Farm. neighborhood, and Kathy's parents have their home in Symphony Village, so we sort of cover the stretch of Centreville. For almost 40 years, I've had a successful career focused on accounting and budgeting, from mom and pop shops up to a recent $1 billion merger and acquisition client. Those industries that I have served typically focus around development, manufacturing, and technology. I was first elected to town council in 2013 and served for over 6 years. My public service employment, I've found a sort of an encore career in public service. This started with serving the town of Goldsboro in Caroline County. I represented Goldsboro on the development team for the Greensboro-Goldsboro Regional wastewater treatment plant. After that, I served as Public Works Director for the City of Annapolis. And then I served as budget officer for Anne Arundel County, overseeing a $1.7 billion budget. Currently, I serve under the Secretary's office in the Maryland Department of Health. I'm ready to serve Centreville. Thank you very much.
Dan?
Good evening. I'll join my colleagues in thanking the League of Women Voters for putting this together, and for QAC-TV for broadcasting and recording this forum, and of course the audience for showing up. My name is Dan Worth. I've lived in the historic district for almost 25 years. 2 of my 3 daughters currently live with me. One is graduated from college. I have one in college and one in high school. I grew up in Dundalk, known as the Rose Garden of Baltimore County. Went to Drexel University, where I got a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. And after that, I worked for the Navy at one of their laboratories in White Oak, or Silver Spring. After they closed that base, they moved us to Dahlgren, Virginia. And then I decided I didn't like the commute anymore from where I was living in Columbia, and I moved over to NASA. I retired from there about 4 years ago, and then went to do a short stint up in New York City at an attraction up there. And then after I returned home, I went to work for one of the NASA contractors, and that's what I'm currently doing part-time. I think my engineering background will be useful as we upgrade our wastewater treatment plant. I'm also concerned about the ethics code, and would like to strengthen that, and also would like to make sure that we don't get inundated with a big box store, and would like to try to adjust our code to keep that from happening. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will move to the prepared question that the candidates were given previously. You have 2 minutes each, and the question is, on your priority list, what are the top 2 actions that the town council should focus on accomplishing? And we will start with Jeff Keel.
My first priority is the aging wastewater treatment plant and the infrastructure in the town of Centreville. There's quite a few roads in the town of Centreville that have failing everything. The second one is growth in the town. We need to allow growth in the town, but we need to allow smart growth, not overgrowth, because we don't, like Dan said, we don't want a big box store in the town of Centreville. So that's my 2 priorities. Thank you.
Jim?
Sure. Those 2 minutes go really fast, so let me lead off by telling you my 2 things. First, as Jeff had said, focus attention on the wastewater infrastructure. That's a big one, and it's a complicated issue. The second, I think we can find ways to increase public awareness and increase public participation. There are others, fiber optic internet, age-in-place facilities, et cetera, that are also on my list. With wastewater infrastructure, this is a couple of categories here. We need to break it down into improvements to the existing plant, look at our discharge options, and pay a lot of attention to maintenance. In terms of the improvements to the existing plant, I think we can look for some efficiencies through technology. When we talk about capacity, and that's a lot what we're talking about with the new plan, is what should the capacity be? How much bigger should we make it? It's a complex issue. I think we should look to growth indicators from the comprehensive plan. I think we should look for requirements for desired economic development. We have an economic development authority here in town. I think we need to review our allocation process. Looking at this from a first come, first served basis is a failed policy. We have an allocation policy. We probably ought to take another look at it and make sure we understand. We should have set-asides for economic development opportunities that we want. We need to grow by choice, not by chance. So assisted living is a high demand for utilities, and that's a high priority for me, so we need to make sure we have the capacity in for that. There are infill expectations. We need to make sure we understand our service area. Big questions: are we going to expand town limits for future growth? Are we going to serve entities outside of the town limits? That's another big question. Discharge options, we really need to look at this. I'm running out of time, gee whiz. Discharge options, we need to avoid buying another 300-acre spray field. We need to seek to eliminate I&I, as Jeff had just referred to. We need to rethink how we look at Northbrook. The system in Northbrook is struggling. I'm out of time, I'm so sorry. Too many points to be made.
Dan, it's your turn.
Yes, it's all about infrastructure. Our wastewater treatment plant needs an upgrade, or at least bring it up to current regulations. And I heard from a lot of folks when I was going door to door that they're asking about when is their street going to be repaired. You know, we've done like extensive work in other parts of the town, but in the parts behind Chesterfield, especially, they've been waiting for quite a while to get their streets repaired, and I'm sure their water and sewer systems need repair as well. So how do we pay for all this? I'm going to look more carefully at the general budget, so hopefully we can free up some funding to pay for some capital improvements. I don't really want to add to the debt of the town. Prefer to pay that off if we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You done? So my two priorities are linked together. I mean, there's a dozen priorities, right? But my two are the wastewater treatment plant and managing the growth in town. Our wastewater treatment plant, as it's been discussed, is at the end of its useful life. This is a hard fact, right? So it needs to be either upgraded and modernized, or it needs to be expanded. Neither is a cheap option. If we do expand it, then we could almost double our capacity. The upgrade, but if we upgrade it or modernize it, that would cost about $10 million. Really not give us much more capacity at all. I believe that we can count on about $10 million as of now in grants. That would be enough to modernize and upgrade what we have now. But in order to expand, we would need another $12 million. That would be probably, there's a chance that would probably require more debt. I am not in favor of any more debt. I believe in growth, but not at the expense of existing residents. Recently, the town gave up management of the plant. I just don't understand how we're going to be able to upgrade or expand the plant if we can't currently manage the plant on our own right now. Second thing, as I said, is managing growth in town. We are at 88% capacity for the past 3 years. When we have heavy rain events, the plant actually shuts down. How can we give away any more? Development proposals like Carter Farm, for example, right now are proposing to use up 100% of our remaining capacity. That means nothing else. No more houses, no more businesses, no more assisted living, no more anything, right? Several years ago, Jim and I were on the council. We actually rewrote the law to allow for assisted living facilities. Tomorrow, the Planning Commission is reviewing a proposal for a Taco Bell. None of that would come. County's expanding a detention center. The Centreville Middle School might be expanding. We have a business park that's 20 years old, over 40 acres. None of that would ever be able to get developed at all if we don't do that. We need to reserve what we have for businesses. They do not use up the services that houses do. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will move to questions from the audience. First, I would just like to ask you to identify yourself and tell us where you live before posing your question. You will have 45 seconds to ask your question, and the candidates will have 1 minute to respond. questions may be addressed to all or just one candidate. Questions addressed to just one candidate may also be answered by the other candidates if they would like to respond. Please do not use this as an opportunity to address specific situations of a personal interest to yourself, but rather ask questions of a more general interest regarding the town and the public. We please ask the questioners to refrain from personal comments. Public exchanges such as this one work best if a high level of civility and decorum are observed. Now, those members of the audience who would like to ask a question of the candidates, please come up to the microphone. Please feel free to form a line so that we can have as much time as possible to answer as many questions as possible. So the first person, charge up there. And form a line.
Good evening. I think I know all four of you pretty well. My name is Rory Sherman. I'm a retired economist and businessman, and currently running my own business here in Centreville. My biggest concern is taxes. I tried to live on a fixed income. It didn't work, so I had to get back and reopen my business in order to pay the taxation and everything else, all the other bills that were popped up. However, what plans do you have to expand business opportunities here in Centreville to avoid taxing the residents? And
Jim, you're up
Jim?
to answer the first question.
Sure. So thanks, Royce. Good to see you again. We do have the Centreville Economic Development Authority that has established priorities and methods for recruitment of businesses or to identify chosen businesses and industries that we should pursue. You're exactly on point in knowing that commercial taxes consume fewer resources than residences, and generally they're paying more taxes. Right now, I think we're at about 9-to-1 residents to commercial. We really need to be more like 7-to-3 or better. So there are some industries that we can and should recruit to build our tax base, and we can work towards that. I don't want to run out of my time here, but
The timers will tell you.
okay. So the comp plan and the economic development plan should guide us in knowing what industries to recruit to serve our community the most effectively.
Do any of the other candidates want to respond to that question?
Yeah, do we do it in order, or how does that work?
Go ahead.
So, economic development, as I had said, one of the most important things is figuring out where the growth is going to come. If you give it all to a housing development, you're not going to get any more until you figure out if the plant can get expanded, where that money is going to be coming from. As I had mentioned earlier, figuring out and trying to attract businesses that use less resources is something that we want to do. Several years ago in the business park, as I mentioned, we rewrote the law to allow for assisted living. We don't want to have another big box retail because that's going to suck away some of our smaller businesses. In my business, I make phone calls all day long, and many times I have reached out and made phone calls to some of the businesses that will appear on Facebook. We want to have this, we want to have that, and I would go and talk with them and try to get them to come here. So, we need to continue to do whatever it is we can. I got a lot of faith in the economic development team that we've got here. Maryland Main Street has done a great job over the past 10 years as well. Thank you.
Okay, so when I first joined council, there was a liaison from the council on the economic development group, which has fallen off. There was no interest in it whatsoever. We have a council person now that's trying to revitalize that economic development, and he's also working with the county to try to attract the director of economic development for the county to get a plan together, and they're going to bring some ideas to the council, and then we'll go from there. We need more commercial tax base, like everybody else says, to offset the residential.
All right. I think in order to attract more commercial growth, we need additional residential growth. Our town is one of the smallest in the surrounding area. I think that's probably why we don't attract as much business. We're also not, being 2 miles off of 301 kind of makes it a little more difficult for people to stop by. I would like to have more commercial growth because, as Jim said, it certainly is a tax benefit to have that. But I think we need to look into developing residential growth as well. And none of that can happen unless we upgrade our wastewater treatment plant. So.
By the way, just for your information, I was 6 years on the Economic Development Commission in the county, so I know what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that question. Next.
I'm Peggy from Northbrook, and this question is for each of you. Regarding water bills, what will you do, if anything, to convert our tiered water billing system to one where we pay for what we use and not so much for what we don't?
Dan, you get to start.
See, I'm part owner of a house, my family home, whatever, in Dundalk. And Baltimore County, I believe, just has a flat rate for everyone. They don't really measure how much you use. Now, we measure how much is being used in order to try to conserve our resources. I guess Baltimore must have infinite supply of water and wastewater treatment, but we do not. And so I've heard from both ends, both from small families who think they're overcharged and large families, when they exceed the minimum allocation, have to pay more. So I think the only way to solve this is to try to subsidize the water and wastewater billing with tax revenue in order to try to balance it out and try to bring down the costs of water and wastewater for everyone.
To me, all right. In previous years, we've had a utility rate consultant. Dave Hyder has been our consultant. He has a model that he uses. A lot of inputs to it. I worked with Dave when I was Public Works Director for the City of Annapolis as well. That probably deserves an update. If I understand a subtle part of your question, you're talking about that base level of consumption that's billed no matter what you use.
Correct. When you use so much less than
Sure.
the top of the tier 1, but you're paying the big bill.
Right. And you know what
Including-
policy? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, ma'am.
Including the law firms in town, they're using hardly anything, but they pay the same amount as someone that's using the top of the tier.
Sure, and you kind of have to have that baseline revenue to keep the utility going. However, there's a policy choice in putting those layers together to encourage conservation, to make sure that people are thinking about every drop of water that they run through the tap. I grew up in South Texas, so water conservation is a big story for me. But I think we can do, I think it's probably time for another analysis of that. In contrast to what Dan was proposing, actually the utility pays the town general fund because the utility uses operations of the town. The billing staff that's on the town payroll, the utility helps pay for that. Some of the administrative staff in town that takes the calls for utilities, the public works staff that otherwise does roads and so forth. So the utility does, in a fairness, pay the town for some of the services. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
I know
Anyone
that
else?
The part of the town has smart water meters. The other part, some of parts of the town do not have smart water meters. So I do believe Northbrook is part of the smart meters and they come out and read them. I don't have the answer for that right now because I haven't really dove into the water thing. I'm more of the infrastructure person, but if I can probably find the answer out for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so what I would say is that, as Jim had mentioned with Dave Hyder, we did do a rate study, and one of the things was built around conservation. The old tier system started out at 11,000 gallons, so that was the minimum. If you use 4,000, 2,000, whatever that is, you're paying for 11,000. We actually pushed that down to 6,000, and we raised the rates at that point, and that actually provided a lot of conservation, and the town didn't bring in as much revenue as we had thought we were going to be bringing in. We had a revisit of Dave Hyder come back several years ago. I think it'd be a great time to do it again. I think ultimately the wastewater, or the water and the wastewater utility should be solvent on its own. I am not in agreement with just taking tax revenue, property tax revenue, to help subsidize. Either way, it's coming out of your pocket, and I think the fairest way to do it is if you consume it, that's how you should pay it, not because you own a property or because your property is more valuable than someone else's. You're going to be paying more. You're going to be subsidizing more. Thank you.
Jim, do you want to respond?
I did.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
okay.
that's all right, yeah. I'll
Next
take another
question.
swing at it if you allow me, but that's all right.
Sorry. Next question? And form a line. That will take less time.
My name is Joe Brown. I live on 122 Concerto Avenue in Centreville. So I'm going to come back to the economic development thing. I was a member of the committee when it kind of disintegrated. I know Eric's trying to get it back together. I recently got a hold of Karen at the finance department and asked her what the ratio is commercial to residential. It's right now 83% residential. 17% commercial. That's not good at all. On top of that, the town has increased our taxes the last 3 years above constant yield. That's not a path we can keep going on. I don't think it makes sense even to consider additional residential development until we get the budget under control. I know that Eric is trying to get economic development going, but I go to these meetings. I don't see any other council members there. So I don't know how the rest of the council feels. But, when I spoke at the hearing for Royal Farms, I said, if you're not going to approve this Royal Farms project, then come up with a plan for what we're going to do for economic development. And I haven't heard a plan from one member of the council, and they don't come to any of the meetings. So it's great to sit up here and say what you're
Joe,
going to do.
can you ask your question?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, you only have a minute or 45 seconds.
That's not very long.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Anyway, thank you.
He's used to 3 minutes.
You have a question you want them to answer? Go ahead, ask them. You can ask them.
I thought I was in the middle of it. Yeah, so my question was, I thought I said it, what are we going to do for economic development? We had an opportunity to do something, and we let that go by the board. So, it's hard to pick and choose, but we can't keep up with that 83-17% ratio. That's a path to disaster, and we're almost there.
Tim,
Thank
I
you.
have that you are the
Yeah,
next.
I'd be happy
Start first.
to answer that. I was around when the CETA got started as well. I attended almost every single meeting, and the last couple of meetings that I went to, there was more town staff there than there were members. It's tough to get volunteers, and I think we need to continue to do whatever we can to get volunteers coming. One of the things I think that's important is high-speed internet and broadband. When I was on the council, we got some stimulus money. I proposed that we use some of that stimulus money to bring broadband to every address in Centreville. I think that would be a very big help. I do believe that in terms of economic development, improving the infrastructure is important. Having good roads to be driving down is an important thing. Knowing that you've got rates that are sustainable is also important as well. Again, I'm happy to do anything, meet with anybody. I've gone out and met with a lot of different people about potentially coming to town, but I think broadband is a big part of it. Thank you.
Jeff, would you like to respond?
Yes. Like you said, Joe, Eric's working on it because it fell off, and now we're trying to get it back. He's also talked to the director from the county about some ideas, and they're going to bring those forward to us and see where we can go from there. And they're also working, the Planning Commission is also working on a comprehensive plan, so that it's going to work together with what we can bring to the town of Centreville. I'm good. That's it.
Jim?
So my wife Kathy and I met at an economic development conference. We were both certified in the profession of economic development. So I feel like I'm pretty well poised to carry this forward. We helped form the Centreville Economic Development Authority. I am disappointed that it fell off. I'm really proud that Eric's picking it back up. The plan, as originally published, identified industries and opportunities that we should go after. As Dan pointed out, rooftops can help drive economic development, a certain type of economic development. A lot of business models count rooftops because they're not going to come here unless there are enough rooftops for that. But that may not be what we're after. If we're after highway services, they ought to be out on the highway, not in town. In town, we need low-impact industries and businesses that either have a lot of capital investment for our property taxes to impact, or we need to have them employing the type of folks that we have in town. I think it wouldn't hurt to do a survey. Oh, I got the stop sign.
Dan, would you like to respond?
Yes, I do. Yes, I would like to see the Economic Development Commission or Authority resurrected. And I think I've learned from working with other volunteer organizations and churches that you can't just sit back and wait for volunteers to show up. You have to actually recruit them. And from going door to door, I found some promising candidates and hope to follow up and pursue them and get them to join in that effort.
Next question.
Thank you. Hi, good evening. My name is Laura Van Wee McGrory. I've lived on Chesterfield Avenue for 15 years. And thank you to everybody who is dedicated to serving the community. My question is for all of you. Do you agree that it's important for somebody serving in the town to attend all the required meetings and complete their term of office? And I really want to hear the answer from all the candidates, because I believe there's a candidate here who missed numerous meetings at the end of his previous term on the council, and another who resigned from the Planning Commission without completing his term.
Jeff, you're up to be the first to respond.
Absolutely. I've been on the town council for 2 years, and I've missed 2 meetings. One was on a family vacation, and the other one was I had shoulder surgery. And people should be held accountable if they're on a board or a commission or the council. So that's how I feel.
We're taking on this responsibility voluntarily, and we come into this knowingly. We ought to be attending all of the meetings that we can or are expected to. There are circumstances, as Jeff mentioned, that may or may not come up. We're going to do this. We're going to attend the meetings. We're going to go forward. I did have, a conflict of interest near the end of my second term, and did not opt to run again for a third term. But yes, we're taking this on voluntarily. I think we're all moving forward with that, and expect to attend all the meetings that we can.
Dan?
Yeah, I certainly expect to attend all the meetings, and I would expect whoever else serves on the council and every board in the town and every commission that they should attend the meetings. That's the whole purpose of having these boards and commissions and the town council.
Yeah, I absolutely think that it's important. It's an honor to serve on the town council, or to be asked to serve on any of the volunteer boards. In my 12 years when I was on the council, I could probably count in one hand the number of meetings that I missed. Fortunately, I don't get sick very often. I do remember one of the last times that I missed, it was my son's 18th birthday, and I think I should have gotten a pass for that one. But yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Liz, can I add something where I may have misled with my prior answer? If I have a few seconds left on my time.
It's okay with me.
I had referred to conflict of interest, and let me say clearly that when I took the position of budget officer for Anne Arundel County, little did I know, but there's a state law that does not allow an individual to have what the state constitution call 2 positions of profit. The budget officer position is described in the Constitution, so are these town council seats. I was not allowed to hold them both. Thankfully, the Attorney General allowed me to finish out my second term, so I did not have to leave in the middle of the term. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Good evening. Thanks for your willingness to run. Steve Klein, Centreville Heights. There's been lots of heartwarming talk about economic development tonight, but the town has got $15 million in debt on its books right now, something we are struggling with, as you should know. And the best laid economic development plans end at a failing wastewater plant. And so that's the elephant in the room, is the wastewater plant. And so my question is really pretty simple and just, I think, hope requires a yes or no answer. Would you be willing to vote to add $10 to $15 million in debt to that already $15 million debt load to fund the expansion of the wastewater plant?
Jim, you're up first.
Financing the plant will be a tough challenge. I'm going to say no to your answer. You're looking for a yes or no. I think there are other ways to finance it. I think the relationships I've built with the leadership at the Meriden Department of the Environment will allow us to seek funds from there, and I think the town manager has already identified some other available funds other than debt financing.
Dan, you're up next.
Yeah, I'll say no as well until we pay down our debt or find grant money or other resources to pay for it. It doesn't make any sense.
I'm a no, and I indicated earlier, I don't believe that current residents should be paying for future expansion of annexations, et cetera. In addition, if we get grants, if we are able to get grants to build out and double the size of the plant, that means wherever we're getting this money from, whoever's giving it to us, whether it's the state or whatnot, they're going to be putting pressure to use that capacity for us to grow. And so, if we have about 1,900 homes right now, we're going to need to almost double that. And so that's a significant amount of more growth. You're going to need to use that up. Whether it's in 10 or 20 or 50 years, you're going to have to do that. I just wonder if Centreville can handle that much growth over the next 20 to 25 years. Thank you.
I'm a no also. I do know we are currently working on trying to get some funding from the federal and state government for the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant. So hopefully we can get those so it's not a burden to the current taxpayer like Tim says. So that's where I stand.
Next question.
Yes. Actually, I have two questions. Can I ask them both one after the other, or do I need to wait in line again?
Sure, go ahead. You can ask both.
My name is Mary Calling Officer, and I live in Symphony Village, and I've lived in Centreville for 11 years. And we love living here, love the whole atmosphere, the ambiance, although I would like to have some more shops and things in town to bring more people into town. And I am on the Economic Commission, the volunteer to hopefully put some changes into effect. My one question, actually, that I just thought of that I wasn't going to ask, the road debacle that we had a couple of years ago was a big mess. And I would like to know from each of you if you have thought about this and have put any plans in place so something like this will not happen again, either management, over an oversight committee, or what you're planning to do so that something like this unexpectedly does not come up. I'm sorry.
Dan, you're up.
All of you. I want you.
Dan, you're next.
I'll start. I just heard us all vote no to expand the wastewater treatment plant until we had the funding to do so. And it would make sense for any project that we undertake. That would include scale of something of replacing water and sewer on Commerce Liberty Street, that we'd have good estimates, we'd have engineering studies done, and there was time to do all that. I mean, the state highway came to the town 2 years before they even started the project. And I think the lack of planning and the lack of having a decent estimate is what caused us to go over budget. And maybe the town could have decided, well, we would just do one street or the other or whatever if we didn't have the resources.
Tim?
Yep, happy to answer. So the state gave us very little time to get things done. The previous time that the state had come through and redid the roads, I think it was 2006 or 2007, within a week, there were leaks in the infrastructure. So the town was told that if we don't fix it in this short period of time before they're coming in, we would either be responsible for doing it all by ourselves, or we would have to patch it. And the state changed the way that patches work. You can't just do a little tiny patch. It had to be curb to curb and a certain amount of space. So we did not have a lot of time to get things done. Absolutely, I think any other projects going on in the future, we've got a long-term capital plan. I know that the council is working on a longer-term capital plan, and that way you'll be able to line things up. And when you have the capital to do that, now that the tax structure is where it is, you're going to be able to plan that out and say, these are the roads, this is the infrastructure we're going to do.
Jeff?
Yes. So the way I understand it is the whole debacle started because they had a contractor working on roads in the town of Centreville. That contractor gave a cost per unit to do the work. And that's not the way you do it. You need to have a contract. You need to, have to get stuff in place to do it the right way. Like a contract, the scope of work that needs to be done. And a lot of people don't understand that estimate was for one side of the road, not both sides of the road. And that's where the cost overrun come. The state highway also had some figures in there that were really ridiculous amounts that the town did not get reimbursed for, that they should have been reimbursed for.
Did you have another question?
Well, Jim has an answer.
Oh, sorry.
Sure.
My chart's getting ahead of me.
20 minutes is probably more appropriate to answer this properly.
Right.
But let me say that I was president of the town council when this came up. And I can remember the cold shiver I got in an open public session when the then town manager explained they had worked their way down Liberty and were out of money. It was terrible. It was a unit price contract, as Jeff described. I think for old infrastructure, that probably could have been the best possible route. I have had and continue to have every confidence that we got our money's worth out of the contractor. He worked very well with the town, and to put in a stretch of 20 foot of pipe cost the same if it took him 10 minutes or 10 days. So I think, as Jeff pointed out, the problem really was in the estimate. And if you're talking about how we're going to do this better next time, we're going to look at the estimate a little better. And if we need to multiply by 2 instead of just accepting the number, that's probably what we're going to do. But I think we got good value out of that. It was awkward pulling us out of that, but I feel like I was at the right place at the right time to help us out of that financial fix.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
May I have just a follow-up statement
Yes.
before my question? I'm not charging any of you with the reason for this, what happened. My thinking is, and I'm ignorant, I'm not an engineer, I don't know any of this stuff, but it's just that there has to be knowledgeable oversight, double checking, checking back, keeping checking on whoever's doing it. And I just hope that that's part of the plan for the future. So thank you all for your responses. My second question is something that was brought up at a forum that we had in Symphony Village, and I hadn't heard about this, and I was wondering what you all thought. There is a proposal for a tower in Symphony Village on council or on Centreville property for the to capture the water meters. Well, I learned that there was a possibility that some type of a piece of equipment could be attached to a fire hydrants and capture the same information. And I was just curious from each of you what you know about that and what your thoughts are on that as a viable option.
Tim, it's your turn to start.
Yeah, so I'm the one that actually brought that up at the forum down in Symphony Village on Saturday. Technology is changing all the time, and I think having remote readers that are smart meters, as Jeff had said earlier, smart meters that can monitor usage 24/7 is a fantastic thing. We live in a great age where we have that kind of thing. I do believe that I did the research. La Plata in Maryland has this technology. It actually is very unobtrusive. It goes on the back of fire hydrants. I can't say that smart meter is the same as our smart meter, but there is that technology out there, and that is a possibility.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have
I-
any comments?
I do.
Okay.
The company that does the smart meters, said we needed the antenna in Symphony Village, a height of 80 feet to better read the meters, because it converts it to a signal, a cell signal, and sends it to the computer so they can read your meters. In other words, if we didn't have that, there would have to be somebody out there reading the meters. So it makes it more cost effective to have, it's not a tower, it's a flagpole. It's going to look like a flagpole, and I actually think they've had a meeting with the board and said, can you put a flag on it? And I believe the town actually agreed to put a flag on it, or the structure to put a flag up. I don't think we're going to put the flag up, but yes. But it makes it more cost effective to read the meters, and the reason for it is it has to be at a certain height. It can't be 25 or 125 feet tall down by the water tower because it won't read. It has to be a certain height to send the signal out to the meters.
Okay, so the grabber, the information grabber, for lack of a better term, on the fire hydrants, they would not satisfy that need.
I haven't heard that.
Okay.
And I don't think our meters are compatible with that technology.
Okay, thank you.
There has to be a better answer than an 80-foot flagpole. It's hard to imagine an 8-story spire being passed off as a flagpole. The U.S. Flag Code does not address this specifically, but you do a little research, and industry standard is for an 80-foot flagpole that your flag is 15 feet tall and 25 feet wide. That's, I mean, the width of that traffic circle is, is about what that flag would cover. It seems crazy to me. There's got to be a better answer.
I guess you'd see that flag all the way from 301.
I think so.
There's Centreville over there. Okay. But yeah, I was out weeding in my backyard, which I rarely do, but I noticed on top of my gas tank that there was this little antenna and that the gas company must have installed. Okay, and I looked it up, and what it does is it reads the level of my propane and relays it by cell signal directly out. Okay, so having a relay system, with an antenna in the middle, I think, or flagpole, I think will be overridden by direct Internet of Things type devices that would just be installed in the meter. So I think, we're kind of jumping the gun on making this choice. I think, probably within 5 years, there'll be direct, connections to the cell tower instead of having to have a relay on a flagpole.
Okay, thank you very much.
Quick question.
Good evening, gentlemen. Quentin Kent, I live on Commerce Street. I've been in Centreville since 2003. I have two questions.
Sure.
All right, thank you. So this is for all of you. The first question is, since I've lived here, I've heard about our sewage treatment plant. Okay, now everyone tonight said this is a priority of mine. I'm going to get this taken care of. We've heard we're at 88% capacity. We heard when it rains, I believe Mr. McCluskey said it shuts down. We talked about grants, this, that, and the other thing. When are we getting to a critical mass where if we don't do something, the whole system fails and then we don't have sewage anymore? I mean, the whole town is just bollocked up, or whatever word you want to use.
Jeff,
That's the
I'm
question.
sorry.
No,
Jeff,
that's fine.
you're up first to answer
I think
this.
we're there now. It's at a critical stage right now, and we have to make a decision. I know it's a process, so we have to try to get the funding for the wastewater treatment plant. We've been trying. We actually have a discharge permit that the state only allows you to discharge so much. So we have a holding pond that holds the water that it pumps out there, so you're only allowed to discharge so much out of that. So we're at the stage like we need to do something right away on the sewage treatment plant. Like, we can't wait. We need another spray irrigation farm that is we need at least 300 acres so we can discharge more. So we get fined from the state if we discharge too much. And that's what we're trying not to do. So we gotta find other ways to discharge.
Jim?
We're there, as the others have said. It's time to do this. My experience in helping Annapolis build their new water treatment plant, my experience with helping Goldsboro develop their new wastewater treatment plant should contribute to moving this forward now. It's time. I'm really having a hard time taking another farm off the tax rolls. I think we need to get creative with our discharge system. When we talk about the system failing, as I understand it, the Maryland Environmental Service is operating our treatment plant now. They're experts at this. They know how to do this well. They do this statewide under contract. So we should have confidence that the system is working now. Historically, our output has been cleaner than our permit calls for. So it's been overperforming in terms of treating the effluent. Capacity and the ability to do it effectively are kind of two different things. We need to address the capacity issue, but I think we should all be confident that it's been dealt with quality-wise well.
Dan?
Well, I think in addition to the upgrade of the wastewater treatment plant, we need to figure out where all this stormwater is coming from. One of the purposes of upgrading the wastewater system, the sewer pipes on Liberty and Commerce, was to reduce the inflow of rainwater into the system, and apparently that wasn't quite enough. There must be other places that need to be addressed in order to cut down on the excess stormwater that's going into the system, because that affects the performance of the plant. And in fact, I think they actually bypass some of the screening and whatever just to keep the system from being overloaded. So we should look into that too.
Yeah, we're absolutely at that critical mass right now. I mean, I think we're probably past it. I just can't believe that the town is still moving forward with approvals on major subdivisions when we already know we're at this point where we're having these kind of problems. You know, as I said in my opening, or my top two things, either expanding it or modernizing it are the two most important, two things that we need to make a choice on. If you modernize it, that comes with buying a new farm as well. That is a critical part. Taking a 300-acre farm off of the tax rolls, farms don't pay a lot in taxes. And we actually rent out the farm that we've got now, and that brings in about $40,000 to $50,000 a year into the town in revenue. So any taxes that a county would be getting, the town actually brings those in. So it actually is a cash positive just from a revenue standpoint.
You have another question?
Yes, second question. So is it Beacham? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I think you said the position's voluntary, but any of you can correct me if I'm wrong. You're paid something as town council members, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is it $3,600 a year?
As I recall, it was $4,500 a year.
Okay, $4,500. So what is going to be your commitment for, aside from meetings like this, any meeting you're required to attend or expected to attend, for that money, which isn't a lot, it's nominal, so I'm not holding you to your feet to any fire to do a lot for $450, but you're public servants now, once you're elected. How much of your personal time could we expect you to commit outside of your regular job, your family, everything else you got going on in your life?
It'd be really easy to say as much as it takes. I think that'd be a flippant answer to your question, but I do intend to apply my expertise as necessary and as needed for the town. Thankfully, our kids are up and out of our house, so it's just the two of us, and we both have full-time jobs, so it's not like we're globe-trotting around. I intend to be dedicated to this just as I was for 2 terms previously.
Dan, do you want to respond?
Well, fortunately, I work part-time, like 3-4 days a week, so I do have the rest of the week to work on things, the weekends. My children don't need me as much as they had in the past, so I would say at least 20 hours would probably be a greater amount as during the budget cycle, which requires a lot more work, a lot more meetings.
Tim?
I'll say I love this job. Every single part of it. My wife would say sometimes, you go to Acme and people are hounding you with questions. I love that. I love being able to solve problems. So it's not, sitting in the audience, you have no idea the amount of time that it takes to do this job. In the 12 years that I was on the council, I went to all of those meetings, required or not. I didn't attend every single one, but whether it was economic development, that's an important thing. You got to go to those meetings as well. Planning Commission, I was the planning planning commission liaison for many years. I had to go to all those meetings as well. A couple of the things that I loved doing were the cultural events, right? So I ran every year a fishing derby, and I would go to the fishing derby, and then we would have a movie night. We started Centreville Day. So going to those things, ribbon cuttings, opening up new businesses, those are all a part of it as well. And that's part that I always felt was just one of the funnest parts of the job.
Yes, I've been a council member for 2 years, missed 2 meetings, but we also have council members that are liaison to specific groups. Like I'm council of governments, so I make all those meetings. They're once a month. And I'm committed, like I said, I've missed 2 meetings in 2 years, and I don't do it for the money. I'm like Tim, I do it because I like talking to people. And like I said, same thing, go to the grocery store, people are asking questions about water meters, they're asking you questions about everything. So you really break it down, you're not really making that much money. It's not, like I said, I don't do it for the money.
Right.
If you break it down, it's probably like $12 an hour.
Yep.
So you don't do it for the money.
But it's the most rewarding $12 an hour.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Yes, because there's a lot of things, like Tim said, there's a lot of ribbon cutting that you attend, there's a lot of other meetings, like closed session meetings, there's a lot of meetings.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question.
Hello, Megan from the Bay Times and Record Observer. I'm here to change the subject a little bit. There's recently been some concern about the sale of Chesterfield Cemetery, and this is for all of the candidates. How do you plan on inheriting that concern?
Dan, I think you have the first.
Yes, I don't see why we're doing that. The people in town have, in fact, I have a relative buried there, and it just seems like losing control of that cemetery would be quite a shock to the residents of the town once they found that happened. So I'm very much against it.
Tim?
Yeah, I'm against that as well. You know, it had come up from time to time when I was on the council, and I think that the town is one of 6 municipalities in the state that owns a cemetery, and it's just one of those things that's been around forever. It's been there since the very beginning of the town. I can remember going and doing a cleanup there one time and seeing a grave from a soldier from the War of 1812. I mean, I think that's pretty cool. When you give up control of something like that, even though it costs the town money, it's one of those things I think that's a cultural gem that we have, right? Like a park or recreation type stuff. You need those kinds of things in a little tiny small town, and sometimes they cost a little bit of money.
Jeff?
I've been on council for 2 years, and I think we've talked about it for 3 times. Nothing definite. So even if we were to sell it, there would be public meetings on it, and we would get the input from the public. And that's how it would go. We just wouldn't sell it. We just can't sell it. I know it is, I don't know what the number is, what it costs to run it a year, but we are only one of 6 entities in the state of Maryland that own a cemetery. One of 6. So, like I said, we talked about it 3 times since I've been on council. Nothing's been definite, written in stone or anything.
In my consulting career, I help companies make business decisions. You cannot make a business decision on an emotional topic like the cemetery. So I really don't see this being an economic question. I think it is in the core of town. It is a strong component of our town. It has the history for the town. It needs to be in proper custodianship.
I have one more question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And if you are elected on the council, one of the big ticket items that you'll be voting on is the growth allocation for Carter Farm. That's going to be, correct me if I'm wrong, it'll probably a little bit after the election happens. Are you prepared to vote on that ordinance? And as a follow-up question, do you feel that it's a safe choice for the current state of Centreville?
Tim, it's your turn to respond first.
Yeah, so I've been very clear. I will be voting on, if I am elected, I will be voting on the growth allocation. I am a no. We negotiated previously with another developer on the growth allocation, and there are many, many things in this growth allocation ordinance that are not included. I mean, it's stunning that the stuff that's not in there that the council is allowing. I don't believe that this development as presented as the site plan is now, I don't think it's fully baked. I think that there's a lot of potential there. I think that possibly the first generation, meaning the first people who buy homes there, may be happy, but this is going to be a problem 5, 10, 25 years down the road, a major problem.
So when I got on council, that was the first thing that came up, Carter Farm, and I was against it. Now I'm against it all again, because why are we going to give up the rest of our remaining sewer allocations to a subdivision? I don't think we could do it. I don't think we should do it, because we need to allow other people to build houses, businesses to come to the Centreville. So if we give up the remaining sewer allocation to one subdivision, I'm not for it.
Jim?
So I'll have to confess that I'm not completely familiar with our existing capacity and our allocation policy as we have now. I also have not had a chance to have an in-depth look at Carter Farm. I know we did look at Carter Farm previously, and a development looked right. I have said, almost in jest, that everyone wants to live on Chesterfield Avenue. It's a premier pathway through town. The Carter Farm is too significant of attractive land within the town limits to get wrong. We have to get it right. We can't let that project fail. So the council needs to ensure that it's the right project for the town. And if it is, and it conforms with the comprehensive plan, and it's conformed with the desires of the citizens, then it should go. But it has to clear those hurdles first.
I don't see how we can approve growth allocation for project, no matter what the conditions are, when we don't have the wastewater capacity to service that area. If we really are that close to capacity, we really do need to reserve it for commercial growth, for the small amount that we have to make up for our lack of commercial growth, rather than using it all up on one project, and then it'll be years and years before we can build anything else.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question?
So, this is okay. Does this work? Okay. So this question is kind of like the last question.
Can you tell us your name and where you're from?
I'm Elliot, and I live on Chesterfield Avenue. But this question is kind of like the last question. What are your thoughts on building up Centreville, whether it be like businesses or residential areas, like adding more?
Jeff, it's your turn to answer first.
Like I said, I would like smart growth, not overgrowth in the town of Centreville, but we can only, right now, we can only allow so much because of our sewer allocations. We don't have the capacity. Everything falls back on the wastewater treatment plant. Right now, our hands are tied because of our wastewater treatment plant. I hate to say it, but that's where we're at with building anything in Centreville. In the future, if we upgrade the sewer plant, well, I would like to attract all kinds of businesses to the town of Centreville. But certain types, not big box stores and stuff like that. We don't need that.
As was mentioned earlier, the town is biased too heavily towards residential properties in town now. Not to mention the heavy government component within town. That affects the tax base as well. So if we're going to have an emphasis, we need to try to balance the scales and bring in the proper commercial properties, the proper commercial entities to get us balanced again. Notwithstanding the sewer issue, obviously that's a big one, but in an ideal world, we would look for that sort of equilibrium.
And assuming we do get the sewer capacity in the future, I think it's important that we develop infill in the town before we would do any sort of annexations of adjacent farmland. I think it's important that we maintain a compact town. It's important for smart growth to make the town walkable and accessible to people. I live on one of the main streets on town. There's a lot of people that don't have cars that walk to work. We need to be able to make the town compact to allow that to continue to happen so that they don't have to find public transportation, which is rather meager in this county.
First of all, Ellie, thank you for coming out and being involved. It makes me so happy to see young people involved in civics. You know, a couple of years ago, a few forums ago, a young man who was in high school actually attended the forum and asked a question similar to what you had asked. And I just want you to know that he then started serving on the Parks Advisory Board and is now running for election here in Queen Anne's County. So be careful what you start doing. You may actually, you may get pulled into that as well. You know, we've got a great thing that's coming here, and it's being built right over here, the YMCA. It's going to be in, they've got an opening date of September 1, and that is just going to be a huge thing, not only for Centreville, but for all of Queen Anne's County. We're going to have a lot of cars coming in every single day for that. So that gives us another opportunity for commercial growth and another reason to protect and preserve the allocations that we've got. You know, over the past 20 years, we were the third fastest growing municipality in Maryland. With the addition of Northbrook, Providence Farm, Symphony Village, we added over 1,000 new homes. And so I think we're still dealing with the ripple effects of that. Again, I think that broadband to every home, if there's a way for us to figure that part out, that's a super important part as well. But I do believe that the YMCA is really going to be a great thing. Thank you again.
Thank you. Next question.
Yes, I'm Chuck Olson, live on Liberty Street. My question is pretty much easy, yes or no. Would you be in favor of a building moratorium for X number or more houses to allow for water allotment for businesses? You know, this affects Carter Farm, and no one has mentioned the other farm, which is, you know, trying to get their foothold in, which is Turpin Farm. And, you know, both of those would take up every allotment that we have currently. And if we even try to work on a more sewer allotment by paying $12 million or whatever, that's going to take a number of years. We don't need for either of those two big developments to take up every allotment that we have. We need someone that has a lot that wants to put a house on it that needs an allotment.
Sorry.
So, yes or no, would you support a moratorium for the big housing?
Jim, it's your turn to respond first.
So I think I'm going to answer your question, but I think it's very difficult to ask
it's Jim's turn.
Oh, I thought you said me. I apologize. Sorry about that.
Jim.
It's all good.
Jim. Sorry.
It's all right. It's all right.
Jim and Tim sound alike.
Yeah. You know, the actual direct answer to your question is no. I would not support a moratorium. However, we can meet your objective in a better way. We can have an allocation policy that isn't just first come, first serve, that emphasizes a blend of allocations the way we want this town to grow. That's the smart way to do this.
But if you allow for either of the two, you've used up everything, and you can't.
If they fit the allocation policy. But the secret sauce is how you write that policy. Do you have so many square feet of commercial development? Do you have so many dollars of tax base in commercial that then allows for so many rooftops of residential? So there's ways to write an allocation policy that allows us to manage the capacity of that plant, to see the town grow the way the comprehensive plan and the economic development plan drive us.
Dan?
Yeah, Jim is right. That's how you solve it with the sewer allocation policy, and we certainly have one now, but I didn't know it was first come, first serve. So what we need to do is allocate. If we do get expansion in the plant,
I'm not talking about allocation. Today, we only have less than 150 allocations allowed.
Right.
Carter Farm was looking for 135. The Turpin Farm is similar. That leaves 15. How many businesses can you bring in with 15 allotments? Because a business might take more than one allotment.
Tim, it's your turn.
Well, we need to adjust the
So-
policy so we don't have as much residential.
So here's what I
allocation.
would say.
That's right.
We need a building moratorium, and I have advocated to the council for this, for a couple of reasons. Number one, it gives you a pause. It gives you some breathing room. You've got developers out there, in particular at the Carter Farm, they're spending money. These are not cheap things as they continue on with site plans and all of those things. Those cost money. If they're gonna go through that and ask for things, they're gonna have expectations. And I don't think it's fair, like, the developer's there to make money, but I don't think it's fair to just say, keep going and keep going and keep going, and then we're gonna say no at the very end, right? So I think there's a fairness on there. If we're gonna rewrite the allocation policy, awesome, that's great. That's gonna take time. That's gonna take probably 8 to 16 months conservatively. What happens in that time period? You've gotta just be able to say, here's where we're going to stand, just for a short period of time. You know, we're looking at a potential new wastewater treatment plant. The money for that, just figuring out the money for that, is going to take a long time. And then if you even go for permits, you're looking at 5 to 7 years. We got to figure something out. So I am in favor of a short-term moratorium until we figure out where we stand.
I'm not for a moratorium, but the process that they have to go through, somebody thinks that the Carter Farm is going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen tomorrow. There's so many processes that they have to go through to get it approved. So I don't think a building moratorium, and I don't know if you can separate a building moratorium for commercial and residential. I believe you can. I'm not sure. I don't have that answer. But if you put a moratorium in, that means no businesses can come to the town either.
It would be a residential moratorium.
Yes.
To
So,
allow
but
for
you would have to
businesses to
rewrite
catch up.
that to specify that it's a residential. Like I said, I'm not for giving it to one person.
And we
Yeah,
all
the rest
talk
of them
about
remain.
Carter Farm, and I've heard that a number of times, but no
We
one
have a
has
lot of
mentioned-
people back there that want to ask
no one has
questions.
mentioned Turpin Farm.
Thank you.
Same thing.
Yes.
Next questioner.
Thank you for being here. My name's Scott Reuter. My wife and I live on Liberty Street. And sounds like firstly you've got your first priority. I hear a theme through all the questions tonight. So my question is hopefully rather simple, and you can expand or broaden it how you like. When you walk through town, the center of town, what do you see? And I mean that in the terms of maybe an opportunity for growth. We've heard a lot of plans, an economic development opportunity. But when we moved here almost 6 years ago, there seemed to be that same feeling of almost on the edge of some opportunity behind the vacant buildings and the empty storefronts. So I just would be curious what your vision is.
Dan, it's your turn to respond first.
Yes, I would like to see the downtown businesses thrive, and because they're within walking distance for me. That's the way a town, and that's why I moved into the center of town, so I could have those businesses be accessible. It seems like the most successful things we have going on are restaurants, and they actually seem to attract people from outside of town to come into town. It'd be nice if they could do something besides eat and leave, but it's difficult when most of our population works on the other side of the bridge and is only available at night. And the businesses that are the mom and pop operations in town tend to just stay open during the day. So as much as I'd like to see growth in the center of town, it is a difficult problem. So
Tim, it's
I'm not going to go until I'm
Tim
ready.
with the
It's
T.
my turn. So I will say, when I walk through downtown, I see one of my most favorite places in the whole world, right? I mean, when my wife and I were looking at moving to the Eastern Shore, Centreville wasn't even on our radar. We literally drove through and saw the downtown, had a coffee in one of the coffee shops, and said, "This is, I want to come here." When we got down to see the waterfront, I was like, "This is the place that I want to raise my kids." So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. We have spent a lot of time and effort in doing things like expanding out the sidewalk. I mean, if you probably moved here right before the sidewalk was expanded. You knew what a horrible, it looked like down there. So, that's been a great thing. You look at all the flowers out there. I had breakfast down there with a friend this morning. So that's such a great thing. Opportunities, we've got to figure out a way to work better with some of these landowners. There's that property on the corner there. I could spend 20 minutes talking about the problems with that property and the horrible things that have happened with that place. And
20 minutes. Tim,
yeah,
no, I'm
I'm happy to have
I'm
coffee
kidding.
with you
I'm
downtown
teasing.
tomorrow if you want.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you for your answer.
I love going downtown too, because I go through there a lot because I go to the firehouse a lot. But the problem I see is there's probably a certain amount of landlords that own all the buildings in the town of Centreville. And the rent that they were charging, a mom and pop shop can't afford to pay that rent. So that's how and just like they said, they only stay open during the day. Nighttime, they're closed, and like I said, all our residents work across the bridge or Philadelphia or wherever. They can work all over the place. By the time they come back, they're closed. So, and there's not that many empty storefronts in the town. I don't think. I can probably think of about 6.
The square is a wonderful environment. It is dominated by government buildings, which are 9 to 5. So the structure is sort of in place for what that courthouse square is going to look like. It's either government buildings, lawyers that work in conjunction with the courthouses there, or it's restaurants that serve midday meals to those. The vision that I've had and have tried to express is Pennsylvania Avenue. The town owns the blank, empty half, the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue. And I have said, why don't we encourage and partner with a developer to mirror the successful side of Pennsylvania Avenue and create a downtown where no government's allowed?
Great. Well, some fair answers. I appreciate your time and your vision and desire to continue to move Centreville forward. Thanks.
Thank you. We're almost out of time, but if you both have short questions, I'll squeeze you both in.
Thank you very much. My name's Martha Herman, and I live here in Centreville. I have been here most of my life. I went away for a few years, but came back. And back in the 60s, 50s, Centreville was booming with business all over the place. Now, I realize things don't stay the same as time goes on, but I have 2 questions. First question is, when was the Centreville Business Park developed, and why hasn't it been utilized to encourage business? There's nothing there but a Dunkin' Donuts, and that's it as far as I know. And you have to remember that resident and transient traffic has increased 300%, plus or minus. And my second question is, the farmland that's part of the park, I assume that's part of the park, is being farmed, and I want to know, is the town getting any money from that?
Tim, it's your turn to respond first.
Okay. So the business park, I believe it was in the late 90s that it was built. The exact date I don't have, but I will tell you that business park was partially financed from a loan from the permanent fund, which was the sale of the utility, the electric utility, and all that money was paid back with interest. There is a lot of space down there, but there's a lot of things that are there already, right? If you were to go through Courceville Drive, there's hospice, they just did a huge expansion. GTI, which was there was a warehouse back there. GTI is now one of the largest employers in Centreville, and they've got good, well-paying jobs. I'm down at the gym every morning down there, and at 6:30, I see car after car after car after car going in there. It should be utilized. The town council several years ago, we rewrote some laws to allow for alternate uses. One of those is an assisted living. So there still are some of those opportunities that are down there. Again, it comes down to allocations. We can't give it away to a residence if we want to reserve some of that for commercial growth.
Okay, one more question. Is that,
Well, I think we should let everybody else.
does anybody else want to respond?
Yes.
Jeff, it's your turn.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go
Actually,
ahead.
there's actually another business in there right now. They're building a big warehouse. Warehouse / office space is right behind the doctor's office. And eventually that road will be hopefully will connect around to Laser Drive, which is Dunkin' Donuts. Of course, we got the Taco Bell coming. And I do know there was an assisted living at one time. It was supposed to be a 62-room assisted living facility, but I'm assuming the developer couldn't get the funding for it, so he pulled. But you also have certain uses that can go in there. Not everything can go in to the business park.
It's been a personal mission of mine to get an assisted living and continuing care facility in the back of the business park. And why do I say the back? Because it can have a pedestrian trail into Symphony Village. My personal experience with one of my parents in a facility 60 miles away from my other parent was a rough time. Commuting, taking my mom into town to see my dad in the facility. So I have a personal drive to see that happen. As they've alluded to, we did have one right on the hook. They had their fully developed plans. They were ready to go, but the funding failed. Their financing fell through, and we haven't been able to get another one back through. But that will be a personal effort for me to get that sort of facility there. I think it will bring other opportunities to us. Again, notwithstanding the wastewater issue, but I think that would drive sort of a boutique hotel facility. It might bring some other services in, some other medical services to support that.
Dan?
In your interest of time, I really have nothing to add to this, so.
Okay, so we are almost out of time, and I think if we have your second question and the last question, we might run over a couple of minutes. Is that all right with everybody? Okay.
Okay, well, basically, my second question was, I'm basically interested in where the Dunkin' Donuts is. All that vacant property back there that's being farmed, is the town getting income from that because it's town property?
Jeff, it's your turn to respond first.
No, it's not town property. Davis Emery owns that. Davis Emery owns that property. So it's not
okay.
owned by the town of
I
Centreville.
thought it was the town.
No,
Okay,
nope.
All
So we're
right,
not
well-
getting any money.
okay.
Tax revenue.
Okay. Well, we do need commercial business here in town.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to
Yeah.
have a Staples, so I don't have to go to Easton to get all my computer products.
Yeah.
All right, well,
Thank you.
thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Last question.
I'd like to start by saying thank you for your service.
And tell us who you are and where you live.
My name is, that would help, wouldn't it? I thought everybody knows me, right? My name is Elaine Studley, and I live at 201 South Liberty, and I am immensely grateful for the service that everybody on this council has put in. Watching the council grow has been remarkable. I was one of the founders of the Council of Five movement and really pushed through, but also lived the experience of working on that. I'm going to throw a smelly fish on the table for everybody, and that is ethics. In the last two election cycles, I saw things that I had not seen in my lifetime. I have lived here 6 years. Like everyone, I'm a Mainer, and I fell in love with your square. I did, but I also remember the small shops on the square and those kinds of things. I believe some of the things that I have witnessed have actually repressed volunteerism, and I believe that they have repressed active business involvement. On the last, for example, and I'm going to give you an example, and I'm going to ask you your ethical opinion of it, and I'd like you to answer me, A, yes or no, whether it is an ethics issue, and B, would you ever participate in something like that? In the last, for example, round of elections, there was a postcard circulated to citizens. It had a personal opinion that about the candidate, and it was very negative, and it was very derogatory against the candidate. I didn't have an issue with that necessarily. I wouldn't agree with it, but I didn't have an issue with it. A citizen can express a negative opinion. That's perfectly legal. It also undermined his business, however. It besmirched his business. And that's where it crosses the line into being, in my mind, into potentially being an ethics issue. And a legal one. Had that person pressed defamation, it might have been a legal issue.
Elaine, I think we need you to ask the question.
Okay, the question is, in your mind, is that issuing a card like that, or other things like police calls happened at the time as well, is that an ethical issue in your mind when you besmirch a business in the town? And secondly, would you ever do it? Was that something that you would use to forward your interests or the interests of your pocketbook?
Jim, it's your turn to respond first.
I can't imagine that I would do that. I was not raised in an environment that would allow me to, in good conscience, do that. From a technical sense, I file an ethics statement with the state of Maryland twice a year. So I fill them out completely. Any private sector work that I have right now is in a different state, so that's not a problem. I live my life without any desire or need to put anybody else down.
Dan?
Yeah, I would have no reason to do such a thing. I think it would be an ethical issue on my part, but I also am a firm believer in freedom of speech. So if someone else did it, I mean, if someone did that to me, I wouldn't pursue any kind of legal action against them.
Kim?
Yeah, I think that's a horrible thing. You know, I ran for county commissioner in 2014, and I was a victim of that. That exact same thing happened to me. And it was horrible. It was horrible for people to call me up and say that they've received postcards in the mail about me besmirching my business. So it's a horrible thing. I believe in you know, running my life ethically and morally as well. The ethics law, as it stands now, was modeled after the state law. The state law, I don't remember exactly the date that it was, 2013, 2014. They made it much stricter and had all volunteers as well as elected officials to have to come up and have a much higher bar as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's a terrible thing.
I personally would never do anything like that. I wouldn't. I don't believe what other people say about other people. So I would not. I would never do it.
And you wouldn't call the police on a citizen
No,
either?
I would not.
Not just not something
No,
you would do?
no,
All right.
no.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you all for a great question and answer session. And we will now move to the closing statements by the candidates. Gentlemen, you each have 1 minute, and we will go in reverse order and begin with Dan Worth.
Oh. Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for showing up this evening, and for the League of Women Voters for putting on this forum. I'd like to conclude by saying that I think that I'm the most qualified to make sure that the wastewater treatment is done right. I've learned lots of, it's kind of the place where I work. It's the way that we operate. We ask lots of questions. Decisions aren't made by individuals or made by teams. And because of that, you have to, it's a pretty high hurdle to get projects approved and concluded. I also plan on being accessible and pragmatic. I listen to what people have to say and don't make conclusions ahead of time. So I hope you'll contact me now and after I'm elected, and I ask for your vote on October 3rd.
Jim?
I realized way too late that you actually put me at the chair with a gavel.
Oh, wait, that was mine.
That could have come in handy from time to time. So, look, I will be honored to serve you, the citizens of Centreville. I take very seriously the public trust that is invested in the town council members to make good, thoughtful decisions and to be good custodians of the public treasury. This is an important role. The $4,500 is a joke considering we're dealing with a $5.5 million budget for the town. So I take very seriously that responsibility. I'm proud of my track record with over 6 years of thoughtful, considered decisions that I've tried to make on behalf of the citizens. I think I have the perfect skills and experience for this. I have an accounting degree from the University of Texas, the leading accounting program in the nation. I have public service experience with the as a Director of Public Works for Annapolis and working on the Greensboro plant. I have developed relationships with state agency leadership. I hope that I've earned your confidence, and I hope that I deserve your vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff.
I want to thank everybody coming out tonight, especially for the questions. They were some tough ones. I also want to thank the League of Women Voters and QAC TV. I've been on the council for 2 years. When I first started it, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but now that I got into it, I think I have a lot more I can do and I want to do for the town of Centreville, and I hope I can get your vote on October 3rd. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate the tough questions. I think it's great. It's actually energizing to be up here and not know what questions are going to be coming. You know, 2 of us will be on the council next month. And if it's me, I hope that you hold my feet to the fire on the questions and the way that I answer those questions. And if it's not me, I'm going to do the same with whoever the other 2 that are going to be up here. You know, I believe that experience is important. I think showing up is important. I have a demonstrated record of showing up. And I'm going to use that knowledge, continue to use my knowledge to the benefit of the community. I want to create and continue to create a community where people don't want to leave. where citizens can find essential goods and services within town limits, where the kids can go on safe trails and go to safe sidewalks. A lot of cultural activities. We've done a lot of that in the past 12, 13 years. Community events. We've built some great parks. We've got some great playgrounds. We continue to modernize infrastructure. We want to continue to implement the long-term capital plan. We've realized a lot of this, and I'm asking for your vote to bring me back to the council on October 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. The League of Women Voters of Queen Anne's County would like to thank the candidates for their participation in tonight's forum, the audience, QAC TV, and this concludes tonight's forum.
Yay.